Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. Today we're stepping into the incredibly high-stakes, meticulously detailed world of forensic science. You know, when a horrific crime occurs, human instinct almost always points us toward the path of least resistance, right? The angry ex, the jealous partner, maybe a suspicious stranger. But, as we're about to see, the obvious suspect isn't always the actual killer. We're going to dive deep into how investigators use a concept I like to call the forensic funnel. It's basically how they use hard science to filter through all that initial noise, eliminate the false leads, and close an inescapable trap around the true perpetrators.
All right, let's quickly look at our roadmap for today. We're going to start with the anatomy of a crime scene, then look at how science eliminates those false leads, explore the undeniable power of physical and digital evidence, and finally we'll wrap up with some absolutely crucial, actionable safety lessons.
Section 1. Anatomy of a crime scene. The crucial first moments that dictate an investigation. Let's get right into it.
To really understand this investigative methodology, we have to look through the lens of three deeply tragic murders. We have Jessica Nelson, a young mother found in her bathtub, Janai Coleman, a beloved teacher shot in her own vehicle, and Dinasha Holloway, who was ambushed in her apartment parking lot. Each of these investigations kicked off in the exact same way, with a highly confusing, chaotic crime scene that basically yielded way more questions than answers. When detectives first roll up to that yellow tape, they are trained to completely ignore their initial assumptions because appearances can be incredibly deceiving. In Jessica's case, a staged bathtub scene initially looked like a tragic slip and fall, well, until police noticed defensive wounds. In Janai's case, it looked like a random robbery. If detectives only followed their gut instinct, these cases would literally freeze on day one. They have to set aside the apparent narrative and let the hard evidence do the talking.
Section 2. Eliminating the false leads. Ruling out the most likely suspects through science.
So, when the inner circle of a victim is narrowed down, science becomes this ultimate filter to systematically clear the people closest to them. Let's look at how police quickly cleared the most obvious suspect in Jessica Nelson's murder, her ex-boyfriend John. They had a volatile history, they were arguing over custody, human nature just screams, he did it! But investigators used a strict, three-step scientific methodology to avoid a wrongful accusation. First step, they verified his alibi to check his physical location. Second step, they collected a DNA swab and ran it directly against the biological evidence found at the crime scene. And finally, step 3, they conducted a comprehensive review of his cell phone location data to confirm his digital tracks. This systematic, layered approach definitively proved John was miles away. The science completely cleared him, which allowed investigators to widen their net and eventually zero in on a so-called family friend named Matthew Crater.
But hey, what happens when the science points directly at someone who swears up and down they are innocent? Take the baffling case of Janai Coleman. Investigators found a Bronson light-long cigarette butt inside her pristine, abandoned car. The DNA on that cigarette perfectly matched a 50-year-old man named Donald Smith. And to make matters worse, surveillance video even showed a man looking exactly like Donald buying those exact cigarettes just minutes before the murder. I mean, it looked like a total open and shut case, but Donald insisted he was innocent. So how could he possibly prove that when his own biological code was sitting right there at the crime scene?
Well, the answer to that impossible question lies in this fascinating biological loophole. Donald had an identical twin brother named Ronald. Because identical twins shared the exact same DNA profile, a basic DNA test alone couldn't distinguish between them. It simply registered as a match. However, while twins share DNA, their fingerprints are entirely unique, formed by random pressures and fluid movements while they're still in the womb. When investigators lifted pristine fingerprints off the roof and interior of Janai's car, they didn't match Donald at all. They were a 100% match to Ronald. Science didn't just find the killer in this case, it actively saved an innocent man from taking the fall.
Section 3. The power of physical evidence. Tangible clues that lock in a conviction.
The absolutely crucial point here is that once the false leads are eliminated, investigators lean heavily on hard physical clues to build an inescapable trap. Once that forensic funnel narrows, the remaining suspect literally has nowhere to hide. And what's amazing is that in all these cases, the victims themselves bravely helped secure the very physical evidence that ultimately caught their killers. Jessica Nelson fought back so fiercely that she captured Matthew Crowder's DNA right under her fingernails, forever tying him to the attack. When confronted, Crowder gave this ridiculous excuse that he, quote, picks his scabs and bleeds everywhere. Janai Coleman kept her car immaculately clean, which meant Ronald Smith's unique fingerprints stood out perfectly, instantly destroying his claim that he'd never even seen her vehicle. And in Dinasha Holloway's case, the microscopic gunshot residue found covering her ex-boyfriend Justin Cole Carroll's right hand completely dismantled his really weak alibi of just driving around.
You literally cannot overstate the psychological impact of this physical evidence.
When detectives placed the indisputable proof, the fingerprints, the matching cigarette, the surveillance video, right on the table in front of Ronald Smith, his resistance simply crumbled. He stepped out for a cigarette, walked quietly back into the interrogation room, and uttered one single word: guilty. The physical evidence was just so overwhelming, it forced a full confession right then and there.
Section 4. Trapped by digital footprints. How the invisible digital web corroborates the physical facts.
Think of physical evidence as the lock, but the invisible digital footprint is the key that actually turns it. In today's world, it's nearly impossible to move an inch without leaving a digital trace. And that brings us to cell tower pings. Whenever your phone is on, it's constantly shaking hands with the nearest cell tower, creating this digital breadcrumb trail. When investigators compare this invisible digital map to the hard physical evidence, the trap completely snaps shut. They heavily relied on these digital pings to place both Matthew and Ronald exactly at the scenes of their respective crimes, which corroborated the DNA and fingerprints perfectly. It proves not just that they were there, but exactly when they were there. Even though Justin Cole Carroll wiped his phone logs entirely to try and hide his tracks in Dinashia's case, guess what? The cell tower still permanently recorded his device pinging right at her apartment complex.
But Denasia Holloway's case features probably the most chilling and powerful use of digital evidence imaginable. Let's look at the timeline. At exactly 9:53 p.m., an unknown vehicle parked near her apartment. At 10 a.m., Denasia was sitting in her locked car when she saw her abusive ex-boyfriend, Justin Cole Carroll, approaching her window wearing a mask. Before he opened fire, Denasia managed to pull out her phone and record a Snapchat video of him walking up to her driver's side door. And that video was perfectly timestamped. It aligned flawlessly with the cell tower pings, placing his phone at the scene, acting as the ultimate, indisputable digital eyewitness.
23 minutes. That is the number of minutes it took a jury to convict Justin Cole Carroll. Literally 23 minutes. Because of that time-stamped video, Denasia successfully acted as her own best advocate from beyond the grave. The combination of the physical gunshot residue on his hand and her digital recording created a completely airtight case.
Section 5. Actionable safety lessons. Empowering takeaways from these tragic cases.
We absolutely must honor these victims by turning their stories into actionable knowledge. The science of solving a crime is fascinating, for sure, but preventing one is paramount. So let's synthesize what we've learned to help protect you. First, if you ever need to reject a romantic advance, like in Jessica's case, try to do it remotely or in a very public space to prevent escalation. Second, like we saw with Janai, situational awareness is key. Keep your head on a swivel and avoid phone distractions, especially in parking lots. Third, always trust your gut. If a situation feels wrong, relocate immediately. If you are confronted, your main goal is to flee, not to fight. Use personal alarms to draw attention. And finally, if you ever realize you're being followed, as Dinasha was, do not drive home. Drive directly to the nearest police station while dialing 911. And crucially, I want to remind everyone watching that you do not have to face stalkers or abusive partners alone. Utilizing support systems, reaching out to friends, and contacting professionals is a massive, critical safety step. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233, or you can go to thehotline.org. There is literally always a team ready to help you navigate a dangerous situation.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought to chew on. Between the microscopic physical traces we constantly shed everywhere we go, and the digital signals our devices are constantly broadcasting, with our physical DNA and digital footprints forever intertwined, is it even possible to commit a crime today without leaving a map pointing straight back to you? Thank you so much for joining me to explore the fascinating, vital intersection of forensic science and personal safety. Keep learning, stay vigilant out there, and I'll see you in the next one.